Hey, welcome to Order Fire. I'm Mark Jacksina. And today we're here at FIBA Farms in Polkville, North Carolina, visiting my good buddy, the chef's farmer, Jamie Swafford. So I guess you have some idea what we're going to be talking about, but I bet you have no idea why I'm standing here amongst all these hibiscus plants. It's because I like to make tea out of it, but Jamie, he makes a living from these plants. So sit back and enjoy.
Jamie Swafford is known locally as the chef's farmer. On his family's farm in Cleveland County, he grows heirloom produce and boutique ingredients for chefs in the Piedmont and foothills of North Carolina. Before he became a farmer, Jamie spent nearly 2 decades as a chef throughout the Southeast and abroad, even making visits to Blackberry Farm and the James Beard House. Equipped with a wealth of experience, a deep culinary understanding, and a desire to preserve traditions rooted in Appalachian culture, he continues to explore food in all of its facets, from the field to special events and his own line of artisanal products under the name Old North. His love of food extends far and wide, and his life as a chef has helped him to be a better farmer.
Jamie, thanks for having us out this morning, man.
Thanks for coming.
So this is it. This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
All of this. This is not much cooler than the kitchen. So you've been out here doing full-time farming for how long now?
This is my 5th season. Scratching the first season to a nil. This is my 4th season in 5 years.
Why would you cut the first season to a nil? I kind of enjoyed that.
I was trying to do a full-time job and farm at the same time on a set schedule, and that Mother Nature wasn't on the same page as I was.
No, I remember that year. For you guys that are unfamiliar, Jamie's first year of farming, he was a full-time farmer and a full-time line cook for me in uptown Charlotte. And we had the pleasure of reaping the benefits of his practicing to be a farmer. I know farmers, you guys are millionaires, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You're selling all these vegetables for free.
You know, if there was one thing that I could leave the kitchen to go and do, you know, farming is more hours and less money.
Yeah.
And so that would be the one thing that I would go and do.
I was thinking about this on the drive up here this morning, you know, like what the similarities and what the differences are, and also, you know, what people's expectations of farmer, or what they have of farmers. Do you think that there's a misconception that you just plant it and you're done? Like it's pretty easy work once you get them in the ground. Like you don't pay for the seeds, right? They just show up. Like there's no pay, there's no cost involved in being a farmer.
Right, yeah, that is sometimes a general conception. Seeds are getting more expensive than ever, and good quality seeds are getting more expensive. You know, and you have to pay for quality just with everything else that you're doing. My season will start February the 15th, and it ends January the 15th. So there's about a month there that I get to do other things.
So what do you do with that month?
I travel and work on other farms.
That's vacation. Walk me through a year. Like start with February. Sort of what are you doing? You don't have to like spend like an hour doing it, but like in a nutshell.
Okay, there's two things that I'm doing. I'm doing short season crops and I'm doing long season crops. I'm working on about 2 acres, so every square foot matters. I have 3 different spots. I will start, generally have cover crop going before I start, and then I will till that cover crop in, get the beds set at the same time that I'm seeding trays. Long season vegetables, tomatoes and peppers are some of the first things I start.
And those you're doing inside, right?
Those
That's what you mean by
doing
trays?
Inside.
Okay.
Yes. And then short season cold weather crops, I do radishes, turnips, roots and greens are what do well for me, both in spring, fall and winter. I will start those outdoors. I have low tunnels, caterpillar tunnels, that I can get in the ground quicker in the spring and later in the fall. And then I just work every inch of my space through that time while I'm prepping for long season crops. I use space in between that to turn over short season crops to keep these. I do a lot of petite vegetables. I do a lot of garnishes, edible flowers, and then a little bit of foraging that I feel confident enough to do.
That was sort of a surprise to me. I mean, working in the kitchen with you, and I'm not surprised that you picked up on foraging, but you come back with stuff that I've never worked with or seen. You know, something like spruce tips, for example, right? So I see them popping up in shrubs, but I've not seen them pop up like, say, like spruce tip brodato.
Right.
Like, I don't see chefs working with those ingredients. So then on top of the layer of farming and then foraging and separating that out, you also then work with free range. Is that the only brewery that you're dealing with, or are you dealing with others?
I deal with a local brewery here in Shelby, Newgrass. Just got Brewery of the Year this year, which free range has carried the past couple years. And I'm very community based. But before we go deeper into that, I do want to say that I know nothing about running a farm. I run this like I run a kitchen, you know. And you were talking about the ingredients here and there, and for me, it's about knowing those guys, seeing their food, knowing their menu, and the things that they like and the things that they want to play with.
Right.
I put out a menu every week to each individual chef, and right now I'm working with about 20 chefs. And I know the things that they like, I know what they're interested in, and I know the things that they're not going to use.
Right. So, like, give me an example. What's something that James Stauffer wouldn't use?
James Stauffer likes full-size vegetables, full-size food. He doesn't like flowers. He doesn't like petite or garnish vegetables. He likes substance.
Okay.
So I cater that to him.
So, I mean, you really have to, you have to put thought into what you're doing as you're gathering what you have as well, right?
Yes.
Do you take requests?
I always take requests.
I feel like a musician, right? What's one of the weirdest things that you've had somebody ask you for that you've managed to pull off successfully?
Last fall, cedar berries, which is juniper berries. I probably did about 60 to 70 pounds of juniper berries and tips, and most of those went to both free range brewing and shrub making.
For yourself?
Beverages, yes.
Which I want to talk a little bit about, right? So you leave the kitchen. Well, you've never actually fully left the kitchen. What time do you get up?
5 o'clock.
Okay, so it's not like you're up at 3 doing, like, you're not picking up extra hours. So anyways, you started doing shrubs. Why? Well, first of all, what is a shrub?
Shrub is an acidulated fruit-based beverage, non-alcoholic. For me, it goes back to colonial times, to the snake oil medicine man. And it was brought about before refrigeration, and the vinegar in that would settle the stomach, because food was either very fresh or it was going bad. And these guys would sell these little bottles on the street corner, and it would settle the stomach. Water wasn't much better than the quality of food back then.
Hence the importance of beer.
And there we go. Just over a year ago, Free Range Brewing was opening up. I've been doing things with those guys for about 3 years now, before they opened the brewery. And Jason had approached me and said, you know, I'd like to do a non-alcoholic beverage on draft in the brewery besides kombucha. Would you be interested in that? We open in 6 months. I was like, yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that. And we went on. Again, we open in 6 weeks. Are you still on board for that beverage? Oh, yeah, of course I am.
You had forgotten about it?
Not forgotten about it, but put it on the back burner.
Right on.
So then the research began, and I started putting it together. How is the concentration going to work out to get in a keg? We're working on a 6-still system, a 5-gallon keg. So I do 1 gallon of shrub, 4 gallons of water, and then force carbonated in the keg, and then it's served on draft.
You're going into production on this?
People loved it. The flavors kept changing. What I try to bring into it is a wild or foraged aspect and kind of off-the-wall flavors that you might not find, but they work, but definitely that no one else is doing.
Right.
I see a lot of shrubs out there. They are hot right now, but I see basic flavors. So I try to do something different, and my focus is on North Carolina farms and wild ingredients, things that I grow, things that my neighbor farmers grow, and things that I find on the roadsides, in the hills, and in the ditches, you know. Not really in the ditches, but so the response was overwhelming for me. My thought was, okay, I'll do this shrub for these guys. I'll keep some at home, and we'll just roll with that. and people wanted it.
Right.
People wanted it for their house. Bartenders wanted it behind the bar. So it just became, people kept asking, when are you going to do a retail line for this?
Right.
So I said, yes, let's do a retail line, not knowing what was in store on that journey.
Right.
The FDA, Department of Agriculture, all the licensing and testing to get acidified food manufacturing permits, commercial kitchen certified. It's been a long road. It's taken a year to get here, and I'm on my last segment. Hopefully by the time this airs, I will be selling this at retail spots in North Carolina.
It's a gray area for chefs to be able to do, and so for you to go into production, obviously, I mean, it's not like you're like sneaking behind anybody's back, kind of like putting in foraged ingredients. So do you have to get that stuff certified, the ingredients, or how does that work differently than like food? Is it because of the acid?
It is a little bit easier because it is a beverage and there's no alcohol in it. The pH is 3.8 or lower, which is the best scenario for bottling anything. It is the most lenient because that acid will kill any potential harmful pathogens.
Right.
So it turned out to be the best way to go, and that was about the best luck I've had on this journey.
Right on.
But you know, it's all food. It's all food related. It has engulfed my everyday. So it's been a cool journey, and I think things are going to go well with it. The flavors will continue to change, and now I'm at a point to where I'm still doing test batches at free range and getting recipes nailed down, getting feedback from people when they buy a glass before it ever goes into a bottle. The ones that hit and the ones that work and the ones that have the shelf life, not the bottle shelf life, but the product shelf life. With dealing with wild ingredients,
right.
We did honeysuckle in the spring. We picked Kia and I, my biggest supporter.
Yeah, right.
We picked 14 pounds of honeysuckle in a week. I saw honeysuckles in my dreams when I closed my eyes. 14
pounds doesn't sound like a lot, right? I mean, I'm thinking what these people out there are like, 14 pounds. I mean, I can go to the store and grab, a 25-pound bag of onions, and like 25 pounds of onions. I mean, it's heavy-ish, but you can count those onions.
Yeah.
14 pounds of honeysuckle. I don't know that I'd want to count each individual honeysuckle.
I don't want to see that many again. But we did a honeysuckle rose shrub back in the spring. And just all of this testing and working with these ingredients, it brings out the chef in me to get the flavor right first.
Right.
And bring in a medicinal property like the pollen in that. And I used rose petals with it in May, which is the best time of the year to get the rose petals. And then ginger was in there as well, which I had saved over the winter. All of those ingredients together, like early spring, people are still getting a cold. I'm using all natural sugars, nothing processed. It is the best option for a soft drink,
right?
If we can call it that.
The bottle that I got of this from you was from a little bit earlier in the season, so I had to do a double look because I was like, oh, well, but there's a change in the ingredients as the year goes, which is obvious, but not obvious.
Yeah, those ingredients change. The recipe is the same. There's the exact same thing going into that bottle, but everything is maturing as we go through that small window of a season.
And you think now, like this one's much darker, and is it because we're later season with the hibiscus?
I think it's the sumac that gives it that darker color.
Yeah.
The sumac is drying out. The acids on that are more mature. It still has a nice lemony flavor profile. Is relatively the same, but it's just more mature in my opinion.
So where I'm from, most farmers have a farm stand. You look like you're doing a tremendous business out of your farm stand. This has got to be one of the quietest farm roads I've ever been on. So how do you sell your vegetables?
I only sell to chefs. You can only eat local. Support those local restaurants is how you get to eat my food. And yeah, that's basically it.
So you're not really out of the kitchen anyways, right?
No,
You're-
I get the best part of it.
With the eating part?
In the back door, get the good 5 minutes with the chef, and then I'm out and off to the next one. I don't advertise, but you know, if you know, you know.
Right.
I started out making decisions based on getting my name out there. And now I'm to a point to where my name is there. People get that I'm related to quality, hopefully, and if you know, you know. And apparently, there's quite a few people that know.
There's a lot of people that know.
I think it has a lot to do with that same drive, that same intensity, working with that. The biggest gap that I've seen is farmers don't work with the same intensity, saying like chefs need a product, they need it now. A lot of farmers don't get that, you know. Go back to Sammy. That is that excellence that all farmers are striving to be. And when I was at Halcyon and watching his deliveries come in, so like I was taking mental notes, you know, that is where I want to be. And will I ever get there? I don't know, you know. But it is something to strive for. Yeah.
As a chef, they always say, you know, you're sort of defined by your last plate. You're only as good as your last plate. For a farmer, what do you think holds true in that scenario?
You're up the same alley, so to speak. You know, it's how good you are right now. The thing that's different for a farmer is he's supplying to that chef. He has to be ahead of the curve. He's supplying to his community. It doesn't have to. Not everyone grows for chefs. That was just my in, but you have to be ahead of the season and stay deep into the season to make it work. And you know, any farmer will tell you next season's always going to be better.
Is there an ingredient that you've discovered is sort of like your spirit animal? You know what I mean? Is there something that you have? Because this is sort of what I get from when I talk to you, and just being out here this morning and watching you and asking you, questions before we started shooting this. You're not only having a conversation with your chefs, right? You're not only having a conversation with the ground, but this is a continuing day-to-day dialogue with each individual plant that's in the ground. But you're right into the ground of it. Is there a vegetable or a plant that has really surprised you as being you get it? You guys speak the same language.
It always changes.
Does it?
It changes every season for me. This season, it is tetragonia we have right here. And this is, they call it New Zealand spinach. I call it kiwi spinach. It is, has a texture.
And you call it kiwi spinach because of what I was discussing with you when I tasted this earlier, because of the sort of the kiwi fruit-esque green flavor that it has and the texture, or is it because where it's from?
Because of where it's from, but it does carry through in that. It has a great glow, which carries through on the plate. It has a great texture. It's kind of succulent. Huge vitamin content in that. And that is my spirit vegetable of the season. It grows through the summer when most greens are dying off.
So this will hold, because it's been pretty dry.
It's the tip. That will hold. I've gotten 10 days shelf life in a refrigerator. I'm constantly testing things to see what kind of shelf life to pass that information on to my chefs.
Do you keep a logbook, or do you keep it in your head?
I keep a journal. I call it a journal.
Right on. No, I didn't think you're writing poetry in there and showing up for a coffee house, pouring your heart out. What's the one vegetable or plant that's been sort of a bane, and it's been, you got to go out there and...
Tomatoes. I hate tomatoes until about the middle of January. They take so much work. It's one of the first things that you start in the season, and then you baby them, you transplant them into the ground, you stake them, you string them up, and 8 months later, maybe tomatoes start coming. And then it gets too hot and the blooms fall off and you don't get a good crop, and you've put 9 months into this plant before it starts to pay off. There are folks that do it well, and I'm not giving up on the tomato.
Right.
I want to do different varieties than anyone else is doing. And I do, I call it the FIBA mix. I do a small heirloom grape, cherry, pear, tomato mix. That way, if one variety fails, that mix still
You can still
works.
sell.
Yeah. Nothing about food production is easy.
Man, that's the truth. You can etch that one down in stone, folks, because that's the reality of it. What has been, working with the earth, working with the ground? I know just working with clay, it does automatically. It centers you, it connects you to something. What has been your one takeaway from this that if the whole thing failed makes it a success?
Just knowing, coming out here every day, seeing the change every day, every 24 hours that passes, is eye-opening. But to know that I'm not in control of any of this, I'm just assisting and helping and working with whatever it is, Mother Nature.
Right.
That is very humbling. And working with the earth, as you said, like when you put your hands in the earth, and it's just something calming and grounding.
Do you find, I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So do you think the trade-off from being financially successful as opposed to being all other aspects of your life successful, or content? I find content to be a success.
There's still that pressure, there's farmers today that are doing it on a small scale, that are making it, and it's my intention to learn from these guys.
Right.
But there is no, we eat well, is first and foremost, and we pay our bills. I have a great partnership with Kia. Everything that we do is all about food, and there's not much better life than that,
right,
in my eyes.
Yeah, you guys are, that is such a great pairing of energy. I mean, you guys are extremely complementary individuals, and I mean in a way that she appreciates food in the way that you appreciate food. She appreciates, it's not even food, man, it's all of the things that are bound around it, right?
Yeah.
The culture, the experience. She writes about it, and you give her something to write about.
Well, yeah, and we teach each other, and opportunities for her beget opportunities for me. We'll meet someone that she needs to meet, and then opportunities come up that I'm doing a dinner with someone else later down the road, and someone's at that dinner who is another story for her, and we end up at a conference with someone new, or get to visit someone at their house, or these things, and our circle is widening.
Right.
It astonishes me, the folks that I get to sit at a table with.
When I had saw that you had connected up with Ian Bowden from the Shack up in Staunton, and that was to me was almost like with you and Kia getting together as a couple on that end, because Ian is he is a rare breed, a fine bird, if you will.
He's very playful in his dishes. He's not bound by any rules. He has maybe 30 seats in his place, and it's reservation only, basically.
Wow.
But it is very vegetable forward Southern cuisine.
Yep.
And if I had to define my food, which is still evolving, I would say that it is vegetable forward sharecroppers cuisine.
Yeah.
And by saying that, I mean a lot of simple dishes, one pot meals, those things. But he's one of the closest things to what I see for myself in cooking.
So the sour corn you pick up from Travis Milton, that's what I had at your potluck dinner.
Yeah.
So then I sort of picked it up from you, and now that's become my sour corn, because it's a little bit different. Which I mean, to me, that's kind of the satisfying thing of, the food culture, or whatever you want to call it. At least I think it's cool. What do you find cool?
I love that you've taken that corn to make it your own, and that's what families have been doing for generations, and passing down these traditions. What I find cool in today is that I can put a list out. I can take one single ingredient, Chantenay carrot, to 10 different chefs in the same city, and see 10 different things come out of that one ingredient. And and it's usually not the thing that I'm thinking of doing with that ingredient. And that's one of the coolest things that I get to see is how each individual mind works different with a single ingredient.
Right.
I love that.
Is there one single ingredient? I shouldn't even say one single ingredient. Is there one single person or one single dish that absolutely blew your mind with one of your own vegetables?
It's always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Is
don't
that a
dwell on them.
diplomatic answer, or is that a legitimate answer?
I don't dwell on them too much, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
love what everybody does in their own aspect, and you know, I guess it would be diplomatic to not pick favorites,
Right.
but you know, everyone comes from a different angle.
Well, doesn't it get back to the you're only as good as your last dish anyway?
That's it. I look at commodities. I look at sugar, you know, with the beverage thing going, and not using processed sugars. Honey can be an expensive item. Sorghum molasses relies on a good crop, and it's getting more expensive every season. So what I've started doing is making my own fruit sugars. So basically I'm making molasses. This we have here, muscadine
Okay.
molasses. This is Pink Lady apple molasses, apple lasses, if you will.
If you will, I will.
I was lucky enough to be one of the few that got a Bradford melon from Nat Bradford. I made molasses from that. Yeah, so this is just cooked down. So we have the natural fruit sugars, and this is the watermelon that I made. And I'd like for you to try that.
Wow. And when you say that, so, and now your idea is to take this and then incorporate it here?
Incorporate it into a shrub or on toast.
Toast is hot now.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Would you be able, is this something that you think you could do here on your farm to be able to produce all your ingredients, forage all your ingredients for shrubs for production, or would it maintain a small batch?
That would be a selfish way to approach it, in my opinion. I feel responsibility to my neighboring farmers, to my community, that I want to do business with them. I don't want to keep everything to myself and
Right.
only do my own business. Plus, it's I can't do everything, and I've found that out. I try to simplify, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah, the longer in tooth you get, the smarter you get, I think. You know, because I'm sure younger you might have been like, I can do all that.
Yeah.
So you spent how many years in professional kitchens?
18.
Wow. And you seem far younger than that to be able to put in 18 years into a kitchen. Did you go in when you were 9 years old?
I went in at 17, washing dishes, and quickly jumped to the line. And I'd been there until 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I was with Harper's Group under Tom for 5 years, off and on through different concepts. Started at Mimosa Grill, went to Upstream. They opened Upstream in South Park. They ended up partnering with Louis Olstein in his space in Charleston and did an Upstream concept there. I went down there for a year and then came back. Took a break from the company, did some other things, met some really great chefs and did some cool things, and came back at Zinc. So that was my tenure with Tom. Still one of the best guys in the city. I've known him for over 20 years, and you know, he's seen me grow, but I've seen him continually evolve in his food and in himself.
Yeah.
You know. After Zinc, that was 2001. I did a stint with Christopher Zion at the Meeting House in Myers Park. Was the space that formerly homed Sonoma on Providence Road. After that, I had a few short-time gigs. Did some consulting, as we chefs call it. Meaning I didn't have a job for a moment, but opened Bistro Laban with Majid, and what an undertaking. I was there through construction, conception, evolution of the menu, and I was there for the first year and a half. So the first 2 seasons from when we opened. And it was something different, and we were doing something progressive. And what a talented guy, Majid. Breads, pastries, and flavor combinations. Really talented guy, and I was lucky to be a part of that and be able to run that kitchen for him. And then we met.
I mean, having you there was an anchor for me. And obviously, I mean, you had I mean, you had deep roots in the agriculture here, and you brought that into my kitchen, not only when you were growing it, but just, I mean, conversations. I mean, the way that I approach tomato gravy still to this day is from you and I talking about it, and then we ended up doing it with cornmeal. I think that was your idea. I can't remember. I just remember it going like, that absolutely makes sense. Why
I
don't
don't remember,
cornmeal?
but it does make sense.
Yeah, and I think the conversation, and it's probably like I'm sitting here right now, like, look how brilliant we were, though. But I mean, I just remember sort of going through the conversation, like, why would you waste wheat, which is a valuable commodity? Do you think it's going back to simpler times? Do you think it was corn or wheat that was grown more on this land, which would be more apt to use at home?
I think corn.
And I think that was, and I think that's sort of where the genesis of the conversation. And then on top of it, we were able to go, and it's gluten free.
Right.
So you left after you left Halcyon and went into full-time farming. You ended up here, and now you're sort of back to cooking. Where do you find the time for that? What's sort of the next step?
That's a funny question. You know, I try to be involved in my community. I try to help out where I can in my local community here in Shelby, as well as out and around with friends. You know, when I'm working in the garden, I get inspiration for the kitchen, and when I'm working in the kitchen, I get inspiration for the garden. So I feel those two go hand in hand, and then the beverage comes in. You know, that is, I find enjoyment out of that. I don't want it to grow big and fast.
When you're out in the garden, you called it a garden.
I call it a garden.
When you're out there, when you're sort of going through your product and having a conversation with it, looking at it, seeing if it's ready, seeing what it needs, and you start having an inspiration for plates.
Yeah.
Are you pulling from the now? Like, if you were out there right now, would you be influenced by the temperature, the barometer, the lack of water, any of these things? And do you think they would show up on the plate?
I think so. It's very much about time and place, you know, and what is now. You know, think about, we're in September, which is a season of its own, but you know, what goes with this, what makes sense, what complements, or what is direct opposite. You know, I'm working with harmony or contrast, one or the other,
Right.
And what makes the most sense, and then how can I present it to you with something that's a cool factor.
Right. So when you're out here, do you listen to music at all?
I do listen to music.
Yeah.
I listen to WNCW for most of the day. It's a nice mix. It's a local radio station. And
when you say nice mix, what's a nice mix?
Folk, local, regional acts. A lot of DJs that I know, I've gotten to know. I've listened to that radio station for 15 years.
Right.
It's in my backyard, right up the hill. And then podcasts. I do listen to podcasts.
What are you listening to now? What do you like?
Right now, I'm listening through Farmer to Farmer podcast by Chris Blanchard. It has a lot of guys on there. It's basically an hour-long interview with a different farmer each week. So I'm going through the archives, and a lot of guys that I look to for experience, for advice, I find it on there, and I listen to that while I'm working, and it just keeps me moving forward. You know?
So what's next then? I mean, seriously, what's the end goal for all this for you?
We're at that point. I think understanding is the biggest goal.
When you say understand, what do you mean?
Just understanding more about food, more about people. Which direction it's going to go, I don't know. I don't control that. I just continue to do all these things I'm fortunate enough to do, and we'll see which way it goes. You know, you had mentioned hiatus from the restaurant business. You know, I see that as an end goal.
To get back to it?
To have a place of my own. But that's like a retirement job, you know.
Is it that chef dream, 30-seat, 4 nights a week kind of situation? Yeah, I think
something to that effect.
It's so funny. The one commonality that I've found with most chefs is it always gets down to that, and it's like we get into the business usually somehow or another. We sort of experience what we think that is, right? And then you just want to polish it up to the 4 night a week or 3 night a week, like do exactly what you want, and then we get stretched, burned, cut, flayed, bedazzled, whatever, you know, just, I mean, all this stuff happens to us. And then all of a sudden we come out on the other side and we're like, I just want that.
You know, that I can say the same about this farm. You know, I grew up here. I grew up on this land and took the first train leaving. You know, I wanted out. I wanted to see the city. I wanted to do things. And, you know, I did a world tour and came right back to this place. It was here the whole time. But it took all of those experiences to make it what it is.
Right.
And I think that through a restaurant, through a career, it takes getting burned, getting filleted, getting bedazzled, to come to who you are. You know, Alain Passard said, chef finds out who he is between 40 and 50 years old. So I'm coming into who I am, and it's more than ever. It's recognizable to me. I think maybe other people can see it, but I'm starting to see it myself.
That's a soft way to end it, but it's getting hot as hell out here, dude. Man,
Mark,
thank you for sitting us down in the middle of this hot ass field. No, but seriously, I absolutely love everything that you're doing, and I'm honored that you would take time out of what is, I'm sure, an extremely busy time, given that you've been gone for 2 days.
Yeah.
You got a lot of shit to do. So thank you for making time for us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, brother. It's our pleasure. We got to look at the camera now and smile. This is ridiculous, Peter. I don't know what to say.